Oakhaven was a village nestled beside a river. The river was the lifeblood of the village, providing water for the crops and a place for the children to play. The gentle sound of the flowing water was a constant, soothing presence in the lives of the villagers. The villagers loved their home. They cherished the sense of community and the simple, peaceful life they led. Every morning, they would greet each other with warm smiles and kind words, and in the evenings, they would gather to share stories and laughter. They loved the trees that surrounded them. The trees provided shade on hot days and were home to many birds and animals. The villagers often took walks in the forest, enjoying the beauty and tranquility of nature. They loved the river that flowed past their doors. It was a source of life and joy, a place where they could fish, swim, and relax. The river was a constant companion, always there to offer its gentle, calming presence. One little boy in Oakhaven loved the birds. His name was Arlo. Arlo was fascinated by the birds that lived in the trees and by the river. He would spend hours watching them, captivated by their beauty and grace. Arlo was a quiet boy. He liked to sit and watch. He found peace in observing the world around him, taking in the sights and sounds of the village and the natural world. He watched the villagers go about their day. He saw them working in the fields, tending to their animals and caring for their families. He admired their hard work and dedication, but most of all, he watched the birds. He loved their quick movements, the way they flitted from tree to tree, and the beautiful songs they sang. The birds brought him a sense of wonder and joy. Arlo loved their quick movements. He loved their songs. He would often try to mimic their calls, hoping to communicate with them in some small way. The birds were his friends, and he felt a deep connection to them. Arlo knew so much about the birds. He had learned their habits and behaviors, and he could identify them by their songs and markings. He was a keen observer, always eager to learn more about his feathered friends. He knew where they built their nests. He had watched them gather twigs and leaves, carefully constructing their homes in the branches of the trees. He marveled at their skill and dedication. He knew what they liked to eat. He had seen them pecking at seeds and insects, and he often left out crumbs for them to find. He took joy in providing for his feathered friends. He even felt like he knew their secrets. Arlo believed that the birds had a special wisdom, a knowledge of the world that he could only glimpse. He felt a deep bond with them, a connection that filled his heart with happiness. The other children in the village teased Arlo. They would gather around him, pointing and laughing, making fun of him in every way they could think of. They called him the Sparrow. It was a nickname that stuck, and they used it to mock him. They said he chirped instead of talked, mimicking bird sounds whenever he tried to speak. They laughed and said he thought he was a bird, flapping their arms and pretending to fly around him. Arlo didn't mind. He liked the nickname. To him, being called the Sparrow was a compliment. Sparrows were small, but they were quick and clever. They could navigate through the thickest of forests and find food where others couldn't. Arlo liked to think he was quick and clever too. He enjoyed solving puzzles and playing games that required sharp thinking. He liked to think he understood the world around him. He spent hours observing nature, learning from the animals and plants, just like the sparrows did. He felt a connection with them, a bond that made him feel special. One day, dark clouds filled the sky. Rain began to fall, slowly at first, then more steadily. It fell harder and harder, turning the village streets into streams and the fields into muddy swamps. The villagers watched the river. It was rising quickly, the water level climbing higher with each passing minute. They worried. They knew a flood would be dangerous. The river had flooded before, and it had caused great damage. They began to prepare, hoping to protect their homes and families from the impending disaster. The river kept rising. The villagers were scared. Water began to creep into their homes. They didn't know what to do. Arlo watched the sparrows. They were flitting around. They were upset. The storm had blown their nest out of the tree. Arlo saw where the nest had landed. It was stuck near the river. Arlo watched the water. He thought about the sparrows. He had an idea. He knew how to save the village. Arlo ran through the village. "We can save ourselves," he shouted. "We can use stones to make the river flow a different way." The villagers looked at Arlo. They shook their heads. "The sparrow is just a silly boy," they said. "He doesn't understand." But Arlo wouldn't give up. He went to the edge of the village. He began to gather stones, one by one. He carried them to the riverbank. He started to build a wall. A few of the younger villagers watched Arlo with a mix of curiosity and admiration. They had always seen him as a quiet boy, often lost in his own world, but today was different. Inspired by his determination, they decided to help. They started gathering stones too, their small hands working diligently to collect as many as they could. Then more villagers came, drawn by the sight of the children working together. Soon, everyone was helping, from the youngest child to the oldest elder, each contributing in their own way. Even the people who had laughed at Arlo were carrying stones now. They realized the importance of his vision and wanted to be a part of it. Together, they built a wall that changed the river's direction. It was a monumental task, but their collective effort made it possible. The water flowed away from the village, diverted by the sturdy wall they had constructed. Oakhaven was safe from the impending flood. The storm passed and the sun came out, casting a warm glow over the village. The dark clouds that had loomed over them were gone. The villagers cheered, their voices echoing through the valley. Arlo, the boy they called the Sparrow, had saved them all. His bravery and quick thinking had turned the tide. From that day on, no one laughed at Arlo. They listened to him with respect and admiration, recognizing the wisdom in his words. They knew that even the smallest voice can have the biggest ideas. Arlo had shown them that courage and intelligence are not bound by age or size, and they knew that everyone, even a quiet boy who loved birds, can be a hero. Arlo's triumph was a testament to the power of unity and the strength of a single, determined individual.